Hi everyone, it's great to see you. We have been having some beautiful sunny days after a lot of rain, and because of that, my planters are taking off. In fact, I'll be doing a tour of the planters probably next week for you, but I have some issues that I need to address today, and one of them happens to be this shade planter. So this shade planter has a beautiful stained glass hosta that was not nearly this big when I planted it, a nice begonia, and I put in two miniature hostas here. We have, I believe this is Teaspoon, and way tucked in over here we have Little Smooch. And the stained glass hosta is just doing so well that I have to rearrange and move the mini hostas out of here just to give them a little space. Now in this planter, I have a really nice coleus coming along. I have my mouse cheese miniature hosta, very tiny in there, and velvet moon hosta. So I'm just going to grab Little Smooch here, Little Smooch, and tuck Little Smooch in over here, where I think this yellow color will be a nice addition, especially with the yellow that's in this hosta, not hosta, coleus, and my mouse cheese. So now Little Smooch gets a little more space here. And I think I'm going to leave the Teaspoon hosta here for now. Now, you're gonna find this happens a lot in the summer with your planters. Just that it ends up being too sunny for one plant in one of them and it needs to get moved, or your plants take off and you need a little more space. So it's perfectly fine. Rearranging is part of the fun of being a gardener. So I feel better about this now. And notice I just broke this piece of coleus. Anytime you do that, pick off the bottom leaves, and you can stick it right in the soil and it will root as another little plant there. So now I've just spread that out. Okay, I have some more shade plants that I need to find a home for. They've been sitting on the deck for a little while. I'm gonna plant up a couple more shade planters to add to these. So I'm making sure that I stay in the shade today as I do any of my gardening work. This seems like a good place to set up. If you're like me, you might have collected a few extra plants along the way this spring, and I've had this tray sitting up on the deck ready to find homes for these plants. And I think I'm ready now. So these planters I had left over from last year. They've been sitting in the shed. I have already filled them with potting mix. I use Miracle-Gro potting mix, but any potting mix is fine. Remember, you want to use a potting mix and not a soil. This is a lot lighter, so it allows for drainage of your pot. This happens to be the soil control, the moisture control potting mix. So it does keep some of the moisture in. I find it works really well for me. So looking at sort of my handful of plants here, I have the Let's Dance Lovable hydrangea that I just did an unboxing of. So excited about this hydrangea, but it's a small hydrangea here. So I have decided that it would be wise to keep a close eye on it this year and next year and baby it along. I am going to put it in this pot. That means that this pot will come into my shed come winter, an unheated shed, and that will give the hydrangea a little extra protection in the winter. So with that in mind, I think that this is a good addition, a starting place for this hydrangea. It probably won't get that big this year, so we should be fine adding in some other plants. And I actually find, if you're like me and you get a special plant, you want to take really good care of it. And if I plant it separately, I tend to overwater something special like that and kill it off. So when I put the hydrangea in with some other plants, I just tell myself, okay, water that planter like you would for the other plants, and I guarantee you the hydrangea will do just fine. So that's how I keep myself from overwatering. There's my lovable hydrangea in that corner. I have a few of the extra heuchera here. This is the all dressed up ball gown heuchera, and I love this heuchera. It has gotten so big in my other planters and just overwintered really nicely. So I'm going to add this, and it adds that great lemony color, that brightness. I do know it gets fairly big. I don't know how big it'll get this year. We're just gonna put that right in there. Give it some space. And I'm looking at my other options here. So I have a chocolate covered cherry coleus that has this nice red color. That's one thing I'll be planting up. And I was really excited about this plant, Wizard Rose, and I got 2 of them. Now I know Wizard Rose coleus are very delicate compared to other coleus. But they looked really good last week. We got a lot of rain. They sat with all the other plants and somehow this is what I have. So they're not completely dead yet. If this happens to you, it's worth planting them somewhere and seeing if they revive. So as sad as this looks, I am going to put one of these in here and hope that Wizard Rose revives. And once again, I would be tempted to baby this plant along. So by putting it in with the others, it's going to get the regular treatment, but in a planter, I think it'll be a good spot for us. The Wizard Rose coleus, they don't grow for me as fast or as big as other coleus. So up here in the front, that should be just fine. And then I'm going to add this. This is Endless Flirtation Bush Violet. And when I went back to get more purple, they didn't have any more. So I got this one. Now, the other thing I'm noticing with my plants, because we've had a lot of water, is I have some yellowing of leaves. If that is happening to, especially your annuals, but your plants in planters, very common. Usually they need some plant food, some nitrogen. So I will start right away doing a weekly soluble, water soluble plant food for these plants, and that should really help with any yellowing of the leaves that you see. Okay. Now, this looks too tall, this looks too short. This one doesn't look like it's alive really yet, but this is going to come back beautifully. Give it a couple weeks. I will give you an update on how this planter looks. And this time of year, when you go to the nursery, you're going to see things might not look in their prime, but it's kind of that challenge to bring them home and give them a start in your garden or your pots. I'm going to top this off with some worm castings. So anytime you have a little fertilizer that you can add on top, compost, you don't want to put this much fertilizer on anything, you would burn your leaves. But the compost is going to be high in nitrogen, which helps with any of that yellowing problem. It also just gives it a really nice look because it looks rich, like rich, dark soil. So I'm just going to pat that in. Okay, and this planter looks all set. Now I still have a couple other plants here. So let's see what we can do here. Oh yes, a few other things I rescued from the yard. So this sad looking begonia was pulled up by a squirrel and I found it thrown across the yard, so I grabbed it. I've had it soaking in water and it seems to be coming back. Same with this little piece of begonia. My squirrels and chipmunks love to dig things up. So if you're finding that yours do that too, rescue those little plants, put them in some water, get the life back in them, and now we're going to give them a new chance in this planter. So I have my 2 begonias, my Wizard Rose, my chocolate covered cherry, and I'll add in one more dressed up ball gown here. And as these come in, I will feel so proud that I was able to get them to come back to life. All of these are plants that, yes, they can take some sun, but they're going to be much happier if overall they're in a shadier place, especially now that we've reached that time of summer where we're really getting some heat, especially where I am. Hopefully you're getting some heat wherever you are too, but not too much. Okay, that looks nice. And let's, oh, I already lost one of my begonias. Here we go. We'll put in this little begonia. And they're just going to be so much happier planted in here. And I'll find a nice shady spot for them. And you watch, by fall, these are going to be full of plant flowers, leaves overflowing. Okay, let's add a little compost. And just like with my other ones that you saw, my other planters that you saw at the beginning of the video, if these come back so well that they start to crowd each other out, we move them. That's part of the process. And that's a good problem to have if your plants are doing so well that you need to spread them out a little bit more. Okay, look at that. They are all in there and looking good. So I'm going to find a place to put these in the yard, give them a good drink of water, and then weekly I'm going to add that water-soluble fertilizer, which I just put the little scoop into my watering can and give them some food to keep them going. We want to make sure that our annuals especially don't sort of die out now that it's getting warmer. And you'll see less flowering if you don't keep up on that plant food regimen. Okay, thank you so much for joining me and getting one of these sort of mundane tasks done, but I feel very happy to have these plants have a home now. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.